There's a Dansette 222 on the bench again today. I did one of these before. It was my old shed radio that I got up and running. This has come in from somebody, I think it was their grandfather had this radio and they'd like it up and running again. It's been modified at some point in the past to take mains in. And there's a switch on the side, which I'm assuming is probably, actually I don't know, because there should be a power switch here built into the volume control. And that just spins, so I think the volume control is dead. The complaint it came with is it doesn't work. So let's figure out what's wrong with this radio. Get the back off. So with the back off, we can see there's a date stamp there, 22nd of June 1961. Something handwritten May 3, and looking inside it we can see there's a repurposed power supply. What's that? 6 volts, 200 milliamps. This is supposed to be a 9 volt radio, so running it off 6 volts may not be ideal. Let's see what happens when we plug it in. So something to check, first off, as this has been modified for mains power, is check the fuse, and it's got a 13 amp fuse in, which is not ideal. This probably shouldn't have anything more than about a 1 amp fuse. I think 3 amp is the pretty much standard UK low mains rating. Let's just check, see if the fuse is good. Meter just on beep test. The fuse is fine, so it's not a dead fuse. Let's investigate further. Something else to note, this is a very old style plug. There's no shrouding on the live on neutral pins, so it's actually possible when you plug this in you could grab and give yourself an electric shock if your fingers touch the sides. A decent plug should have a shrouding on the pins, so this yeah, definitely not up to any current UK standards. Let's just get this out the way. We can get rid of this power supply now, and just going with a current limited power supply, which should be more useful. Okay, so we're back. We're just connected up to 9 volt supply, just 9 volts on the power supply there. Flip the switch, no obvious sound. Yeah, this is very loose adjusting the volume control. The whole audio amplifier board moves. The radio is currently taking about 10 milliamps, 11 milliamps of current. So something's happening. Oh. And it sounds like the audio chain is working, because we get scratchy noise when we power it up. So the speaker is working and the audio board here is doing something. So let's work backwards and see where we end up. Found the issue with the volume control. It's totally broken. Looks like somebody has been in, done something with it, but yeah, that's totally broken. And the reason the whole board moves is because this has been taken out. There should be a tab through this hole. In fact, if we look underneath, we can see where the tab is. So it just needs putting back in. I'll see if it's possible to repair this volume control first. To get the chassis out of the case, and the case is just this fiberglass, I think, or plastic. There's two of these threaded rods. There's one which is over here, which I've already taken out. They just go onto a screw which is buried down the hole. That gets you to the stage where the chassis is loose. What's holding it in now is the front dial. I can't remember what's... It's actually quite a nice slow motion drive on these. I'd forgotten just how nice this actually is for tuning. I need to have a look and see if I can remind myself what's behind this, if it's a screw or if it's all glued on. Okay, a little bit of brute force and ignorance. It's a push fit on here with a band, so it's plastic, so getting it off you have to be careful not to crack anything. But luckily this one was loose enough that it would come off, and it's keyed, so it should only go on one way. So hopefully now the whole thing should drop out. Just got to be careful not to bend the pointer too much. I'll come back when it's out. And there we go. The case, which has a nice stamp of, what's that? M Limited, W&M Limited Plastics, A grade. And a bit of crud, but nothing much else to remark on. And then we have the radio chassis. Quite a nice cork surround. I think in the previous two of these I've looked at, the cork has been completely perished. This one's in better condition than the ones I've done before. The previous one of these radios I repaired. I made a video about the Black Hunt capacitors were all cracked, and they are apparently pretty notorious for doing that. These ones all look like they're actually in pretty good condition. It's got these red, yellow and black Plessey electrolytics, which are also known for generally being crap. I think probably the next thing to do is put some power on it. We know the audio stage seems to be working because the speaker crackles. So put some power on it, see if we're getting anything over to the RF board, and then do a bit of fault finding. Probably also just put a signal generator on the audio staging. Check it really is actually amplifying and not just doing something strange. So with the chassis out, I've been able to connect up and get power to this. Trap, for those that might not be expecting it, this is a positive ground radio. The transistors are all PNP, so yeah, the live side, the positive side of the battery is actually chassis ground on this. I'd completely forgotten that when I started looking at this. I was scratching my head for a few seconds and then realised that exactly what was going on. So ground is going to ground on the battery, negative on the battery. The red battery wire doesn't actually go anywhere. It's the other end of it is just floating around over here. It was going through the switch, and then it was connected up to ground on the radio. So when I powered it up, wasn't actually expecting very much. Switched it over to medium wave, and it was making a bit of a hissing noise. It was actually picking up noise from my LED lights, and the station's there. It's working as a radio. Turn the volume up a bit, or down a bit, depending on which one I'm going.
Business. Advertisement. Punjab radio te.
So Punjabi radio on medium wave. So just did a station ident, Punjab radio 558 AM. So we're on the medium wave. So if I flip this switch, we should switch to long wave. Yep, get a nice crunch. Adjust the tuning, can probably find the long wave station if the long wave side is working. Yeah, there's something they're farming today, probably Radio 4 long wave. Bit of a quandary now. It's working. Could it work better? Would it work better if I replaced these capacitors? I probably will do, just to make sure it keeps working. It wasn't working before I took it out of the box, out of the case, which is up over there. So yeah, bit of a head scratcher. Have to have a think about this. It's a couple of days later since the last clip. Having a think about this radio again. I do want to replace certainly these electrolytic capacitors. I was hunting around for my capacitor tester, but I've obviously put it somewhere safe, which means it'll probably never be seen again in the lifetime of this universe, unless I trip over it by accident, which is always possible. It's a tip in here. Right, I think I'll pull these out and just give them a test anyway. I can test them on just one of the cheap eBay special capacitor tester thingies. Pulled out the first of the Plessey electrolytics. This is a 100 microfarad 6-volt part. The leads are a bit short, so I've just soldered it up to pin header, and it's on just a cheapo component tester. I can't find my proper capacitor ESR meter I built, so we'll use this. Get the power up. £135 microfarads, 0.8 ohms ESR. It's actually a lot better than I expected it to be. I may just put this one back. Pulled out the second capacitor. I had to bodge this one as it's been used axially and the leads were too short. 100 microfarad, 25 ohm ESR. So this is definitely getting replaced. I'll probably go through, just replace all of these. My thinking is the owner of this radio actually wants to use it as a radio. The fact the very first capacitor I tested, which was this one, tested okay, there's no guarantees it's going to last. They want to use it as a working radio. So it's not a collector's item. No one's really going to look inside it and notice capacitors have been changed. So I may as well get it working and put new parts in as much as possible. Final capacitor on the audio board is this 100 microfarad 12 volt DCC BR. Don't know what brand that is, but testing this 155 7.5 ohms. So yeah, switching out all the capacitors on the audio board. The only ones I'm not sure about changing, these Hunt capacitors. In the past, the ones I've seen of these tend to crack. These ones all seem to be in pretty good nick, and the audio board seemed okay, so I might just give them a quick in-circuit test, see how they look. But I can always come back and replace those if needed. Testing one of the capacitors off of the RF board. It's supposed to be 8 microfarads, 50 volts, so it's 140 ohms ESR and 7,000 nanofarads. So yeah, I'll definitely be exchanging this one. That leaves one final Plessey. The one I've just tested is mounted on top of this. So I'll switch this, take this one out and test as well, but I think they're all being switched. And then we'll put some power back on the radio, check it all works. I was just removing this capacitor. It's come away. You can see it's leaked. There's electrolyte all over the board, which has all gone sticky and horrible. So that's going to need a clean up before I do any more, and find out if this resistor is still anywhere close to its printed on value. Right, back with this radio again. I've been through, replaced electrolytics here and here on the audio board. That made a big difference. It was immediately much louder, much clearer audio. I then went through, replaced the two electrolytics here. Didn't have ones that correctly fitted the spacing, and it's a pain to take the entire chassis, front chassis off to get there. So they're sort of mounted up with just some heat shrink insulating them. I'll probably just put a dab of silicone or something to hold them in place. But as I say, this is a radio that will be used. It's not for a collector's item or anything. It's already been through some modification in its life, so I think my repairs are keeping in the spirit of how this radio has lived. It's currently listening to something on long wave. Let's just adjust the volume. There's a bit of a hiss and background noise, which sounds like data. It's actually coming from the power supply for my lights. If I turn the lights off, I can't film, but then the interference goes away. If we switch back to medium wave, turn the volume up a bit, you can still hear what sounds like data, but it's actually the LED power supply. And tuning is good and lively. There's lots of stations audible. I won't hang around on any in particular so this doesn't get a copyright strike. So yeah, it seems to be repaired. Next thing to check is just I may just peak up the IF stages, although it sounds pretty good. I may just give it a sweep with the VNA. Check the tuning is actually correct for the dial, and then get it back in its case, get the batteries connected up, and hand it over to the owner. Just a final segment on this Dansette 222. It's back in the box now. It all went back together nice and easily. I think this is the only one I've ever seen that's actually had both screws. I left the power switch. I couldn't find a direct replacement for the potentiometer switch combination in here. So I've left the potentiometer with the switch section removed, kept the modified switch attachment. I went through, just peaked up the IF stage, but there wasn't really a lot to be gained. It was already pretty much as good as it was going to get. I checked the alignment. It's damn near spot on. Like a radio, which is on 205 around here, comes spot on the dial. Went up to the far end, slightly off there, but not that anyone's really going to notice. I couldn't see an obvious way to linearise the dial. There was no obvious trimmer capacitor on the main tuning capacitor. But it's loud, it's lively, it's a very nice working little radio, and I still love the tuning on these. The slow motion tuning is just an absolute joy to use. I'll have to dig out the other one I repaired, which was my old shed radio, and get that back in service. I forget how much I actually like listening to these particular radios. They're I mean, I think this was £12 when new, which was probably just over, it was more than the weekly wage at the time in 1961, the average weekly wage. So not a junk radio, surprisingly good, given it's the best part of 60 years old now. So this will be going back to its owner. I just need to put a battery box in. The one I've ordered hasn't arrived yet, and I can't find the one I would otherwise put in, but it will run off AA cells. It takes about 10 milliamps for reasonable volume. I mean, certainly listening volume, it's taking no more than 10 milliamps. So AA cell should last a fair while. If you put rechargeables in, it'll be even better. But thank you for watching. Bye for now.